Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Virgo, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of September 2024. Just needed to make sure I got my year right there. I hope you're well and happy birthday if you've had it already or if it's upcoming. I'm using the Pagan Otherworlds Tarot for you today. Right, before we begin, if the reading resonates and you'd like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. That's the first link in the description box below. The second link in the description box will take you to my private community, which is the Order of the Phoenix over on the Circle platform. You can get access to all of the extended content for no extra cost beyond the membership fee, and hang out with an extraordinary group of people. If that sounds like it might be your bag, you know what to do with those links. Right, Virgo, let me move this cup of coffee so that you can see that I haven't got it on a coaster. I remember upsetting a Virgo once a few years ago with that. So much that she actually sent me a coaster, bless her. Anywho, let's flip the camera around. Loved that coaster, it was great. I'm not sure where it is though, it's been packed up and it hasn't been unpacked yet. Anyway, let's have a look and see what's going on with you. Could I have 3 cards for Virgo, please? Whoa, there we go. We've got the 2 of Cups in the recent past. Current energy for Virgo, please. 2 of Swords, interesting. And what's coming towards Virgo for September? Oh, that one proper hopped out. Queen of Swords, that's Libra energy there. It could be that there's a bit of a tug between heart and head at this point. Don't necessarily leap to intimate relationships, because it may not be of that matter at all. But we have the Page of Wands at the bottom of the deck, and I can't help but feel between the 2 of Swords, the Queen of Swords, and the Page of Wands that there's a decision that needs to be made, and the initiation of something that you've been kind of toing and froing over for quite some time. Now we have the Triple Goddess deck here, which is what we're going to use to clarify. Ugh, she says, she didn't even shuffle them properly. So let's get this out and get some meat on the bones of this month for you. Tell me about the 2 of Cups, please. Ooh, okay, so we have the Hanged Man and we have the Ace of Wands. Very interesting. Tell me about the 2 of Swords. 2 of Cups on its side. And the 6 of Wands, which also is on its side. Tell me about the Queen of Swords, please. We've got the 9 of Swords. Yeah, look at that. Page of Swords and the Fool. I think this actually, in all, Virgo, is a very good reading. Please don't get freaked out by the 9 of Swords, because I think it plays a very important part in what's unfolding here. But there isn't really any getting away from the fact that your mind is whirring about possibilities at this point. There's a lot of swords on the table, and they seem to be in a state of active conflict with the cups that are on the table, right, which is like the 2 of Cups in both instances. So let me pick up this pencil, because I always need to have something to fiddle with while I'm talking to you. And let's start over here at the 2 of Cups. Now, very flat interpretation of the 2 of Cups is quite simply relationships, and on some levels those can be your most intimate sexual relationships. Your husband, your wife, your wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, those kinds of things. But it does actually extend out beyond that, because for me the core of the 2 of Cups is talking about a particular level of intimacy that we experience with another, right? It's shared goals, shared visions, and alignment for the future. Taking all of that into account, it can cover your familial relationships, those that are close to you, cousins, parents, children, siblings, things like that. But it can also talk about your business relationships, because we have a degree of intimacy with those people with whom we go into partnership with, right? That wouldn't be the same as we would experience with someone else, for example. So there is a relationship question, but it's not quite as straightforward as the obvious. It's that interaction, a shared intimacy with someone else, with something that you've been working towards together. It can indicate husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, all that sort of thing, but it doesn't have to. That's what I'm saying here. So we have this very positive card showing up here. Is this Venus in Cancer? I think it's Venus in Cancer. Talking about really coming together, right? Looking at the world in the same way. And it feels like there's a shared vision that you've had. Or I've just been corrected. Somewhere, Virgo, there's been an assumption that your plan was your plural plan. We have the Hanged Man and we have the Ace of Wands there, and the Ace of Wands is the initiation of something new, right? It's new creativity, it's new passion, it's all those kind of things, right? An assumption that what you see as the path forward is what everybody else involved thinks is the path forward. But I'm not sure that that is entirely correct, Virgo, because we see, just jumping ahead to your current energy at the moment, we can see a misalignment beginning to show its face with the fact that the Two of Cups is now on its side. It's like, well, what we thought was the alignment, what we thought was the goal, what we thought was the shared intention, actually is starting to turn into something that is a bit different. And it doesn't feel exactly like it's throwing a wrench into the machinery or, a spanner in the works or whatever. But it is causing you, I feel, to have to think very differently about what you had considered would be not only the next step forward, but kind of like the big plan of the initiation of the new life, the new creativity, the new passion that you intended to start experiencing in some way or another. Now, I actually feel like I want to pick up this deck here, which is the Wild Unknown, and just have a look at this Hanged Man here a second. What's he talking about? Yeah. You see, what we've got here between the Hanged Man and the Five of Wands is seeing something from a different perspective that is showing where the cracks in the plan lie, because there's conflict here. There's conflict of action, more importantly. The Five of Wands being numbered 5, right? It speaks of instability. It talks about not having that, this is what we're going to do and this is how together we are going to do it kind of energy. It's more like, well, I thought we were going to do it like this. And you're like, but what the fuck? Like, I thought we were going to do it like this. I'm not sure if this is a question of communication, and it might be, or whether this is just, as I said, sort of exposing cracks in the longer term implications of any kind of movement that you're making here at the moment, where there's a sudden realization, or there has been a sudden realization, that you're not quite as on the same page as you thought you were. Let's just get one more card for this Hanged Man. 10 of Pentacles. Perhaps in terms of, quite literally what you want for your future in terms of stability and security. It could be that whoever you are working with, let's just put it like that in this way, has a very different idea of what represents security and stability to them versus what you thought was kind of the obvious. With the Ten of Pentacles is a really interesting card, multivalent as all tarot cards are. And it does have that huge interpretation of stability and security. But showing up here, when we've got an ace and a 10, and they are misaligned, because the Ace of Wands will not turn into the Ten of Pentacles, and the Ten of Pentacles does not initiate from an Ace of Wands. They can certainly play their part, but it's not the natural progression of this suit, right? Aces do not flip into wands, and so on. Wands do not flip into pentacles, there we go, and so on and so forth. There are also interpretations of duty and responsibility and all those kind of things. They're very earth sign like anyway, I think, taking into account what everybody needs versus what just you need. But I do feel like there's an increase in responsibility here for you somewhere, Virgo, because where the cracks may be showing is in the realization that quite a lot of what you're trying to pull off here, you are going to have to do yourself rather than relying on a reciprocal level of energy coming through with someone else. I feel like that's considerably fewer of you. For the majority of people, it's like, oh, actually, we're not really pulling in the same direction here. There's not quite the same obvious step forward for both of us as it had first appeared. So communication being incredibly important at this point, and obviously, Virgo is a sign that is ruled by Mercury, so communication is always really important, but it's almost like you've realised where the extent to which this hasn't really been sat down and talked about enough that you both understand where each other is coming from, and you both understand what each other is trying to achieve here. The Ten of Pentacles can also speak to homes, it can speak to businesses, so it could be that there is a question about these two things, literal physical establishments. But it also talks about heritage and legacy. And there could be a question here of what it is that you are wanting to leave, what you are wanting to embrace, what you kind of want your life to mean moving forwards, and how that is slightly different. I mean, it could be a question of protecting your legacy, because the Ten of Pentacles talks about inheritance sometimes too. All of these being questions that seem to be arising for you at this time. And like I said, this realization that you're striving for something that is slightly mismatched to what somebody else is asking you to kind of go back to basics in some sort of way. Now, when we come to your current energy, we've got the Two of Swords here. This is in the upright. This is presenting the quandary, the problem, if you will. I've sometimes referred to this card as willful ignorance, which is perhaps a little brutal, because well, it is, right? It's just a little bit confrontational as a judgment on somebody's energy. But what I find quite often with the Two of Swords is that there is a decision that needs to be made, and sometimes that's people are aware of that, and sometimes they are not. But what really shines through is that there is some aspect of this that is not being truly considered, right? We're trying to make some sort of intellectual decision between two swords, and let's not forget that these are representing, the workings of the mind, right? Your thoughts, your words, all these sorts of things, right? Logic, reason, that sort of thing. We've got two different emotional positions here, and two different logical, reasonable, rational positions here too. But this is saying the moon, the intuition, is not really being consulted to the extent that it should do. And it could be you who is having this issue, Virgo, or this might well be speaking to the other person that you are dealing with, to give you some sort of insight as to how to roll with this, right? How to pull this all together and get it moving forward. But there's also a lack of consultation with the emotions, because the emotions have something to say about this. Now, the reason why I call this card Willful Blindness is because in this moment it seems to me that the conscious mind is trying to make a decision, but the subconscious mind is not getting an opportunity to input its information to. It is in fact screened off from the conscious decision making process, and this is what causes the stalemate, because there is nothing to choose between these two swords. They are effectively identical, right? There's got to be something that gives somewhere, and it's not going to be in the swords. Now here we see the problems really starting to accelerate, perhaps amplify certainly, when we realise this kind of deadlock between emotion and reason that is going on right now. There is another way of looking at this to say that all of this may actually be happening within you at this. We're focused on the Two of Cups as being a partnership of two people coming together in whatever way that applies. But we could well be speaking to disparate parts of you, actually, Virgo, that you are trying to synthesize, and whether it's betwixt heart and mind, or conscious and subconscious, whichever way it works, there is a schism that is emerging that is showing itself, that requires dealing with before movement can occur. Because the Two of Cups fallen over like that is this isn't going the way that we think it's going, right? If it was a strong presentation, it'd be upright like that. If everybody was able to express what their feelings were about it and be confident that they would be heard, then it would be upright. If we were working together, then it would be upright, but it's not. It's lost some of its strength. It's lost some of its integrity. You know, it's like a plant that doesn't have the water that it needs. It falls over. Water, emotions, cups, tarot, lovely. So we've got somewhat of a deadlock here, and it's like I said, this interesting interplay between the heart and the head that's rippling right the way across here, with the interjection periodically of wands and pentacles. It's kind of like, well, we can't engage with the wands, we can't engage with the pentacles until we make some really serious headway into how we can both get what we feel like we need from this situation. Like I said, you may be the person who is not consulting their emotions about something, or you may be dealing with a person who's doing that, or it might be part of you. We're going to put it like that. The Six of Wands on its side is also very interesting, though, because the Six of Wands is Jupiter in Leo, and it is a card that is given to be associated with that sense of victory and success. Sometimes when this card comes up, we're really having to reassess what victory and success in any given situation might actually look like for us. Because there's this expectation versus reality reality check that seems to be happening here right now, and it's kind of like, well, I thought everything was really, really clear. It all made perfect, in a perfect amount of sense, and now all of a sudden, it's turned into something it's not. It's like when you've got something on a nice slow rolling boil, and you put the things in, you turn away for a second, and before you know it, the whole thing's just exploded in a big clusterfuck of bubbles all over your cooker, and you're like, I literally looked away for a second. What is this? To turn the heat down, and this is very. I think this is a really important point. We have to turn the heat down on the passion that you have in this moment, because it's not ready quite for that application of heat. We need to step back and just make sure that what we're looking at is what we think that we're looking at. Where there are cracks appearing over here, there may well be a corresponding and complementary cracks on the other side of something, and it's like, well, okay, we need to employ the objectivity, step back and have a look and see what this all is. Because if it's something that I've noticed that's been happening for a lot of the signs over the course of the readings that I've been doing for September, it's that although August was, Mercury was in retrograde along with a great number of other planets, it was incredibly frustrating, and it was really quite foggy. I'm not sure how it was for you. For the most part, it was okay for me, but I think that was more because of attitude rather than just a sense of everything being plain sailing, because it absolutely wasn't. And because I was aware that it was likely that all of these things would start going wrong. When they did, I was just like, okay, well, this is fine. We'll just breathe, step back, give it a moment, let it pan out. Like, whereas a me of probably 6 years ago would have gone immediately up to 11 and just be flaming the shit out of everything, right? But then I'm a Leo, I'm not a Virgo, although I do have a couple of big Virgo placements. Anyway, that's what I was going to say. What I have noticed for the signs is that August was a month where it seemed like things didn't really happen, or things stalled, or things stopped. Things were kind of frustratingly staccato in their flow, in their expression. But it does seem to be a month that changed a lot of things for a lot of people. And that borne in mind, this need to step back and reassess what feels like it might actually be successful versus not for you, right? Identifying where the compromises might be. These are your needs and these are the needs of whoever else you're dealing with. You know, how can these be renegotiated in the light of the new information that you have? And I do believe that you have new information, Virgo, about not only their intentions and their goals and all that kind of thing, but more importantly, your own, and the way that you're willing to work together with someone in order to achieve those. Tell me about the Six of Wands. Yeah, I see we've got the King of Swords, which is Aquarius, and we have the Ace of Cups. Now, as I'm recording this, we are but days away from Pluto bobbing out of Aquarius and coming back into Capricorn, which is very, very good for restructuring long-term goals that we wish to dedicate ourselves to. It feels to me that this is really useful, the way that you've been kind of pulled up here, to make sure that the information that you're using is the right information to calculate the odds of success and align yourself, it's fallen off my chair, align yourself with that better than the old information that was either, you know, patchy, sporadic, or not giving the full picture about something. Because this King of Swords is all about decision making, right? Yes, he represents Aquarius, and he can represent, you know, those who belong to the older professions, you know, where emotion is needed to put to one side. We put emotion to one side in order to make decisions that are logical and rational and reasonable and all that kind of thing. Judges, doctors, accountants, surgeons, that sort of stuff. We don't want these people swept away by emotion. We want them to be thinking consistently, but also fairly, and, you know, all this sort of stuff. But it's about the decision. It's about making sure that you have all of the information to make the decision, and that you are not being either swept away by the emotion of being slightly unseated by revelations that are starting to come out of this misalignment, whatever it is. But also that you are staying true to what is important for you. Right, not moving into a space where you are willing to entirely compromise all of the things that, you know, are represented for you by the Ace of Wands, the Ten of Pentacles, and the Six of Wands too. Instead saying, no, actually, there are things that I need and there are things that I want. Those are non-negotiable. Maybe how we get there is negotiable. Maybe I can let something of this go here, but this is important, because the Ace of Cups is all about the relationship that you have with yourself. And this is very interesting because we're taking a step back from the Two of Cups. Taking a step back, there's the Four of Wands and a cool, calm and collected assessment of the situation. Let's pop that there. We're taking a step back from the Two of Cups and going, well, actually, in light of what has been revealed, either by my subconscious or by somebody significant that I believed I was, you know, forging in a new direction with, perhaps this is causing me to shed some light on my own stuff. You know, how much of what I'm trying to do here is reactionary, how much of it is trying to mitigate rather than create. You know, quite often it's the arrival of material problems, or even, you know, logistical problems and whatnot, that will cause us to start reassessing what our needs are in the moment. You know, what's right for somebody when they're 25 and fit as a flea is not going to be the same thing that's right for somebody who's in their, I don't know, in their early 50s, late 50s or something like that. Because life changes and people change too. And I think taking things off the level of assumption is giving you an opportunity not just to reassess what it is that's going on here and decisions that need to be made in light of what is showing up, but also take a moment to make sure that what is being striven for here is in alignment with the Ace of Cups, your Ace of Cups, and what is right for you. When Virgo's, you know, the axis of Virgo and Pisces is, I think, uniquely concerned with being of service. More so than any other axis, I think, that you would find in the zodiac. That's my personal opinion. But quite often that service is something that kind of it doesn't really take into account what's going on with us. And in those situations, it's possible to become either, you know, a complete martyr about a situation and entirely forgo all the things that we need in order for the betterment of others, or become somewhat resentful about the fact that there is nothing left over for us. I remember coming across a phrase a few years ago, and I cannot actually remember what it was properly, but it was retaliatory, something like this. I don't know, it was a retaliatory deliberate insomnia, or something along those lines. And it hit me a little bit like a brick, because this is something that I had done for years. It's like feeling that there's so little time for you during the course of the day that you will deliberately make yourself stay up later just to do something that is for you, so that you feel like you've had any of that in your life at all. I mean, what that shows is that we're not very good at setting boundaries around, you know, the importance for us of having a bit of time for us to do our things and all that sort of stuff. Well, sometimes circumstances just don't allow that. I mean, you've got, as was the case for me, 5 children all in the same fucking house, all with differing needs and you know, or whatnot. Sort of goes with the territory that there's not going to be a lot of time left for you. But it's these kind of questions that we're asking ourselves now. You know, there is something about this that is rather of the nature of a Mercury retrograde. And as I'm reading this, Mercury has stationed direct and it is moving forwards, but it is slow. And it's going to be slow to back up to, you know, its usual speed. And we do have a myriad of other planets that are in retrograde. So whilst it's not exactly Mercury retrograde, it's got that quality of, before you make any big plans, just check in with yourself and make sure that it is actually what you want. The 6 of Swords over here is about moving away from something, right? And actually it's the 5 of Swords, right? So it's moving away from that conflicted, whether in, you know, internally or externally, a conflicted position that is somewhat self-sabotaging, towards those calmer waters. But it's interesting to me that we have double 2 with the 2 of Cups and the 2 of Swords, and we also have double 6. Now both 2 and 6 by definition have always got somebody else involved in it from a numerological perspective, right? It's about intimacy, but then it's about the group with 6, because 6 is about union and harmony and drawing people together. Think about the quality of the Lover's card in the Major Arcana, right? And this question of whether everything that you are trying to launch forward with is a mitigation of your own needs and the domination's the wrong word, the prioritization of somebody else's, which then leads to the question of, is that actually any good for you at all? Does anything about this actually work for you personally? Or have you slid into a state of being of service because that's what you do? I mean, what this is saying to me is that, you know, there's a necessity here for you to just take a step back a little bit and reassess all of the information before these important decisions are made. Now, I don't believe that there is much in life that you can't undo if you decide that you've changed your mind. You can literally change your mind in an instant, but you will incur considerable fucking consequences for that. And I think this is about avoiding the bigger consequences that could be incurred by not just taking a little bit of time here. When I was saying about turning the heat down on this, it's not about flaming anybody, but it is, I think, actually like consciously turning down the urgency of whatever it is that you seem to be working on here at the moment. Like, the movement will happen for sure, but it's really important that it's done right. And I really don't need to tell Virgos about the importance of something being done right. But these cracks that are showing up, and maybe this miscommunication, and likely this miscommunication is not on your toes, this one. Like, this could well be the person that you are dealing with, but this mindfulness that the full extent of everything has not been fully communicated by somebody else should be enough to give you pause just for a second, to step back and go, okay, well, I need actually all of the information, because the kind of changes that I'm trying to make here are huge, and like I said, consequences will be incurred and will need to be dealt with hereafter if we don't do this right the first time. Now, when we come into what's coming towards you for September, we have the Queen of Swords, and I like that actually. And in some ways, I don't actually mind too much the Nine of Swords being here either, because rather than it being something that is distracting or indicating a loss of perspective for you, I think it's showing a bit of a leap. We've got 3 Swords cards in quick succession, accompanied by the Fool. Now, the Fool is always well, he's a number of things. He can represent some sort of big leap into the void, right? The act of faith, the leap of faith, in fact. He can talk about trust and all that sort of thing. He can speak about the inception of a new cycle that we are, fully engaged with. But he also talks about freedom and liberation. And I do wonder if there's something about this situation here that is more than needs to go with you. It's almost like whatever's coming up here, there's an opportunity for an excision of weight that will help you move faster in the long term if you give yourself the opportunity to sit and consider all of the information as it is beginning to show up. Like if you've got the dial turned up to 11 and you're trying to forge forwards, you're going to miss details. And Virgo doesn't like to miss details. But if also, if you're trying to operate at that level of speed and urgency, maybe you don't miss details, and what you're doing is running the risk of burning yourself out. I mean, both of these seem to me to be very legitimate issues, and ones, if at all possible, that we would like to avoid. So this Nine of Swords is, well, yeah, there are truths and revelations I feel that are coming out here that are probably a little bit difficult to hear, particularly if you have already started creating in your head the plan moving forwards, right? If you started to create some sort of structure in your own mind so that you understand what your role is moving forwards, like it's taking a step back, and that's like, it's uncomfortable. I'm like, for fuck's sake, I just made this. It's a funny thing. One of the things that I've been hissing about in the last few days, literally hissing about, is the unpredictable nature of my days, right? So I'll say that I need to leave the house, I need to go do a thing, and that thing won't take very long. I assign, all right, we can be there and back in 2 hours, it's not a problem. And without exception, every time I leave the house, what actually ends up happening is I don't get back until the end of the day. This is driving me absolutely fucking wild. I don't know what it is. I have no idea what it is. I mean, it's just this country and this sort of weird time vortex that happens whenever I leave the safety of my home. And this morning, I said to my partner, right, this is what I'm going to do today. It's this. And then I had a thought, and then I went on a mental side quest, and then I picked up my phone and had a look at it, and I was like, actually, we should go and get that white good that we need. We should go get it now. Right? Because we've got a car. My car's blown up, but I've hired a car for £17 a day. What an absolute bargain. Right, let's just go get it done. And he looked at me and he raised an eyebrow. And I was like, we need some milk as well. And he was like, mm-hmm. And then he just went out of the gate. And then he came back about 30 seconds later and he went, it's not going to fit. I went, what? I was like, it's not going to fit in the car. I was like, for fuck's sake. And I was like, well, I guess I'm not doing that then. I guess that's not a thing that's happening today. And then I caught myself and I was like, I've literally just done the very fucking thing that I've been complaining about that's been driving me mad for weeks. Like, I literally just switched the plan on myself with no notice whatsoever. And frankly, very little, nothing other than just an urge for spontaneity, which why did I do that? And because he's a Sagittarius, he was like, oh, it's okay, plans change, everything's fine. And I'm like, no, that's not okay. I need to not do that with myself. I have work to do, gotta go do the work. And then I ended up here. So Nine of Swords doesn't have to be a full scale breakdown. Oh my god, everything's so awful, so dreadful. I don't know which way is up. It can be those things, but I really don't feel like it is that for you, Virgo. It feels like there are a few kind of truths, maybe a few revelations that are coming from the mouth of somebody else, the brain of somebody else, or even from a different part of you that up until this point hasn't really been consulted about what it is that you're doing moving forwards, that are difficult to hear. And they're difficult because they start stabbing away at the structure that you had just created to know exactly where you were in space and time and how these things were going to happen. But it's followed immediately by the Page of Swords. No, this is about the acquisition of information. This is about pulling it all together. This is about synthesizing it all. It feels like a step back, or maybe even 2 steps back, but actually what it's doing is making sure that the moves forward are not wasted. They're not going to have to be backtracked, or you're not having to deal with someone or some situation kind of flaring up again in just a few short months, going, well, this isn't even what I fucking wanted, and this is awful. And having expended all of that energy that you've put into it, then having it kind of backfire on you somewhere down the line. It was like, well, no, take a step back for just a second, allow yourself to process all of the information that is coming, whether it's coming via you or it's coming from other people. But I mean, September here for me feels like it's very much about getting to the actual truth of the matter and not operating in assumptions. Like I said, the biggest situation that you may come across here is not your assumptions, but somebody else's, and you're like, what? Like, really? You could have told me this 2 weeks ago before I spent 2 weeks of my life putting all of this in place, only to discover that this is actually not helpful at all. Like I said, it's got that kind of retrograde flavour about it, but at the same time, this is different because it's showing you the problem, but it's also giving you the space, or rather you are giving yourself the space to reconsider what the success of the situation might look like. Engaging the energy of the Fool then, right? Like I said, it feels like there's some dead weight here that you've been kind of factoring in, carrying along with you, that actually may not need to come. Whatever that means. That could be stuff, that could be people, that could be all sorts of things, It could be considerations that you've been trying to put in place when suddenly you're like, okay, well, if you don't even want to do that, why didn't I think we could just do this instead, right? Then we don't need to haul this emotional stuff, this physical stuff, whatever it is. We don't have to haul all of this with us. We can just do this. We can travel a little bit more lightly. Ultimately, the Fool is about traveling lightly. She's depicted here as having nothing but a backpack on her back and a cat. That's wonderful. That's absolutely outstanding. Because we come full circle. We come back to the inspiration, the new behaviours, the new life, the new whatever it is that you're trying to set up for yourself, that you were so inspired to do just a little way before now. But what we have accompanying it, rather than a passive water energy, is the very king who is built to wield this Ace of Wands. I mean, this is a step back to be able to take a huge leap forwards, actually, Virgo, is what it is. And in the interim, what it's also doing is putting you and somebody else back on the same page, and this is phenomenally important, I think. So although it's got that slightly up down quality to it, and indeed this Nine of Swords feels a little bit like, oh, for fuck's sake. My Saturn's in Virgo, my Jupiter's in Virgo, right? I know that, for fuck's sake, very, very well. When you're trying to attend to the details of things and then shit just starts getting chaotic and disorganised. It may be difficult here, But ultimately, like I said, like what is possible for you with the lightening of the load, and there is a lightening of the load, as you patiently synthesize all of the information and allow that new picture to develop. Huge movement forwards, much swifter than would be otherwise, and much more masterful, right? Because that ace isn't just trying to do all the work itself, and it's certainly not coming into conflict anymore with someone who's kind of resisting what you're doing. In fact, instead, we have alignment, we have movement. This is wicked. I like this very much, right? It's definitely putting you on the road to where you want to go. Adjustment, all that sort of stuff. This is great. This is really great, actually. If you can just breathe through that moments where that kind of like eye rolling, for fuck's sake, oh, I cannot believe this. If you can just put that to one side for a second and go, right, there's new information here. I need to process it. I need to pull it all together. It's going to create a different picture. But that picture is much more achievable than what it was back here, you know? So I'm going to go to the extended now. We're going to dive into September specifically. If you'd like to join me over there, you're very welcome to do so. You can do that on Circle, or you can do that on Vimeo. I would be delighted to see you in either place. But if that's not your bag, not to worry. I mean, just expect this little hiccup in your plan, right? And when the hiccups start to emerge, when the awareness of the cracks in the plan because of somebody else start to emerge, give yourself permission to step back and turn the heat down on the urgency and all those kind of things, and sit with the new information, because I think it's going to completely change the way that you see this, but also completely change the ease with which all of this can happen, you know? All right, I'm going to leave it there. Know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.